chapter 30, verse 1. Hezekiah sent all of Israel. Okay, now he's done working with, okay, he's got the priest going. Now he's sending messages out to all the people. He started with the priests and the Levites. Now he's going to the rest of the people. Hezekiah sent to all Israel and Judah, and he wrote letters to Ephraim and Manasseh, that they should come to the house of Yahweh in Jerusalem to keep the Passover to Yahweh of Israel. For the king and his leaders and all the assembly in Jerusalem had agreed to keep the Passover in the second month. Well, why were they keeping it in the second month? What instruction do we have about keeping Passover in the second month?
Traveling.
If either you're unclean or you're traveling. By the time they'd done all the repairs to the temple and sanctified all the priests, they were not ready and prepared to do it in the first month. If we back up just a little bit to chapter 29, the answer to that can, while they're doing it in the second month, is explained here. But chapter 29, verse 34. But the priests were too few that they could not skin all the burnt offerings. Therefore, the brethren and Levites helped them until the work was finished, and then the priests had sanctified themselves. For Levites were far more diligent sanctifying themselves than the priests. But the priests were not sufficiently sanctified. There were not enough priests to do the offerings. To refer back to a point James had made, this mental captivity, this mental journey, if you will, the spiritual journey, maybe that took time for the priests to properly sanctify themselves. If they were physically unclean, or what's the phrase I'm looking for? Not spiritually unclean, but
Such the dead bodies.
no, they were ritually unclean. That's what. If they weren't ritually cleansed properly, were they not spiritually unprepared? Were they not spiritually cleansed? They were still on this journey, if you will. They could not keep, back to verse 30, for they actually keep it at the regular time because a sufficient number of priests had not consecrated themselves, nor they had the people gather themselves together at Jerusalem. So people were still traveling. They were still on that journey. Verse 4, and the matter pleased the king and all the assembly. King makes his proclamation throughout all of Israel, from Beersheba to Dan, that they should come to keep the Passover of Yahweh at Israel at Jerusalem, since they had not done in a long time in the prescribed manner. So there have been a few kings over since they had kept the Passover. Ever since the start of this string of bad kings. And the runners went throughout all Israel and Judah with letters from the king and his leaders and spoke according to the command of the king. So, let's take time. Remember, they didn't have Facebook. They didn't have Messenger back then. They didn't even have the Pony Express. He sent out runners. It took guys literally running from one city to another and working like a relay team, if you will. Children of Israel, return to Yahweh, verse 6. Return to Yahweh, the mighty one of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel. And he will return to you the commandment who have escaped from the hands of the kings of Assyria. And he will have this. Okay. And do not be like your fathers and your brethren who trespass against Yahweh and their fathers, so he gave them up to desolation, as you see. Now do not be stiff-necked as your fathers were. We read that phrase a few times over in Scripture, don't we? Do not be stiff-necked. We read it from Moses. The time of Moses. This problem seems to go with Israel goes all the way back to Moses and went up to Joshua's time, even up to the time of Stephen. One of the last things he said about them before they stoned him. They seem to have this problem with stubbornness, but Yield yourselves to Yahweh and enter his sanctuary, which he has sanctified forever. Serve Yahweh your Elohim. That's the fairness of his wrath, if you turn from you. Because if you return to Yahweh, your brethren and your children will be treated with compassion by those who have led them captive. Here's something we need to consider. Let's start again. If you return to Yahweh, your brethren and your children who will be treated with compassion by those who led them captive, so that they may come back to this land. For Yahweh your Elohim is gracious and merciful, and he will not turn his face from you if you return to him. This reminds us of any other scriptures. Anyone? Now remember, these people were still, he was reference to the people who were still in captivity, particularly the ones by Edom, because they're the ones who ran for the most captives. First, it started off, if you returned, they would be treated with compassion. Because these neighbors were cruel. Just knowing that they would be treated with compassion and kindness would be a big improvement in their situation, even if they were never released.
King Cyrus.
The what, Daniel?
King Cyrus.
Okay, and it took Daniel mentioned King Cyrus. Cyrus was not yet a king, not yet the king, but he's a little bit over, but yes. The hope was to be the release of these captives. Tell me, what was one of the things on the list of Joshua's mission?
Release the prisoners.
Release the prisoners, yes. When he came, yes. To release the prisoners. His mission was to release. Now he didn't go conquer the Romans, but what he did do is he provided a way for that mental release, that spiritual release. If you return to Yahweh, and even while they were still under captivity of the Romans, had the nation turned for a season, they would be treated well, possibly even he and the Father made it seem to fit to lift it, had the entire nation turned, but they did not. The idea was hopefully they turned to them, that their children, their wives, and their other family members would be permitted to turn back from their captors. But what about the people actually in captivity themselves? What's their role in this, in all this? Remember, the people still in the land, their job, their responsibility was to turn to Yahweh, follow the lead of the king, follow the lead of Hezekiah. Their hope was to see this king, to see their children, their wives again. How about the story of the prodigal son? The one who was in his father's house, they went away. Was he not? Well, guys, the parallel is not perfect, but the principle, I think, is still there. While he went away, was he not this prodigal son? Was he not spiritually enslaved? Again, remember, he had what was his father's. What was given to him, it was gone, it was wasted. And he became a common servant, tending pigs of all things. He became a pig herder. But he got tired of it. And yes, I said, do you have your hand up?
Yes. We became pig eaters. He became a pig herder, we became pig eaters. Yeshua, when he spoke in that day, he said, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. He spoke in the future tense to them and to us. So today, so like the prodigal son, one of these days, our eyes were open, and he says, you know what, I want to return back to my dad's home.
Mm-hmm. Because his eyes were open. You're correct. His eyes were opened, and it was only and we thought it took that from down as low as you can get. That he saw his condition, and he sought to return to his father. And the father received him with open arms. You know, Hans, you have your hand up?
No, I was passing it.
Oh, I'm sorry, you were passing a pen, okay. Sometimes I'll mistake shooting a fly or passing a pen with my hand up. That's easy to do up here. Yes. Now, Joshua's story was about a spiritual redemption. It involved a physical one as well, to a point. And also, okay, that these people were looking to a physical redemption. They wanted their family back. And how about this? But when they did come back, should they come back, what about their spiritual freedom? Serve Yahweh. We got a promise to release the captives. So the runners, verse 10, they go from city to city through the country of Ephraim, Manasseh, and as far back as Zebulun. But they laughed at them and they mocked them. Ah, get out of here. Nevertheless, some came from Asher, Manasseh, Zebulun, humbled themselves and came to Jerusalem. Some believed, some did not. This seems to be a pattern, doesn't it? Some believe, some do not. Some believe, some do not. Paul had that problem, didn't he? Paul ran into that issue. Like father, like son, right? Also, the hand of Yahweh was on Jerusalem to give them singleness of heart to obey the command of the king and the leaders at the word of Yahweh. Verse 13, now many people, very great assembly, had gathered at Jerusalem to keep the feast of unleavened bread, or unleavened, in the second month. They were keeping Passover. It was all starting in Jerusalem. Isn't there a prophecy, I'm thinking it's in Joel, David read the other day, about the law going forth from Zion? That's what's going to happen when the kingdom is finally set here, right? And all the rebel kings on this earth, the fleshly kings, physical kings, are removed. Yahweh serves as the kings of kings. And those in the first resurrection will serve as other kings, and wherever we are assigned. So all will go forth from Zion. We see a parallel here. It was all coming from Zion. It was all of Hezekiah's commands to turn to Yahweh, come keep the Passover. They arose and they took away all the altars that were in Jerusalem. They took away all the incense altars and cast them into the brook of Kidron. So the people had taken all their idols. They were tossing them in the same trash dump that all the rubbish from the temple had been thrown. They slaughtered the Passover lambs on the 14th day of the second month. And the priests and the Levites were ashamed, sanctified themselves, and brought forth burnt offerings to the house of Yahweh. They stood in their place according to their custom, according to the law of Moses, the man of Yah. The priest sprinkled blood on and received from the hand of the Levites. So that was the sanctification process still at work. Verse 18, and the multitude of people from Ephraim, Manasseh, Issachar, Zebulun had not cleansed themselves, but they ate of the Passover contrary to what was written. But Hezekiah prayed for them, and he said, "May the good Yahweh provide atonement for everyone who prepares his heart to seek Yahweh." Seek Elohim, Yahweh of his fathers, although he has not cleansed himself according to the purification of the sanctuary. Yahweh listened to Hezekiah, and he healed the people. He forgave them. Remember, because it was in their heart to turn and do well. We see this tension of Yahweh looking upon the heart. We also see something else in Hezekiah here in this short little passage. What is one of the roles of Joshua in many things he does for us? Is he not our intercessor before the Father?
Yes. Yes.
Frank, yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yes, he is good. Yes, he is our intercessor before the Father. And we see here Hezekiah praying on behalf of the people, acting as an intercessor, if you will. And Yahweh heard. He heard. So the children of Israel, before I go there, gotta remember what was the condition of Israel when they were set free from Egypt? They weren't exactly the purest people on earth, but Yahweh received them all the same. He unconditionally. It's just as the question of Hezekiah. Remember, what was Hezekiah's heart at this time? He was a mighty man. He was doing all what was good and right, according to his father David, like David had done. It said right at the beginning of this story. So, children of Israel were also present at Jerusalem, kept the feast of unleavened bread 7 days, gladness, and the Levites and the priests praised Yahweh day by day, singing unto Yahweh, accompanied by loud instruments. Hezekiah gave great encouragement to all the Levites who taught the good knowledge of Yahweh. They ate throughout the feast 7 days, peace offerings, and making confession to Yahweh of their fathers. These people were confessing their own sins. Gradually, slowly but surely, they were moving the planks out of their own eye. They're not pointing to someone over here, someone over there. Gradually, these people are removing the planks from their own eyes, one at a time. Let's see. I lost the place here. Verse 23. Thank you. Then the whole assembly agreed to keep the feast another 7 days, and they kept it another 7 days with gladness. King Hezekiah gave to the assembly 1,000 bulls and 7,000 sheep. And the leaders gave to the assembly 1,000 bulls and 10,000 sheep. And a great number of priests sanctified themselves. The whole assembly of Judah rejoiced, and also the priests, and the Levites, and all the assembly came from Israel, sojourners who came from the land of Israel, those who dwelt in Judah. And there was so great a joy in Jerusalem since that time of Solomon, son of David, the king of Israel. There had been nothing like this in Jerusalem. Nothing like this feast. There was nothing like this Passover since the time of Solomon. It didn't say they had to keep it since the time of Solomon, but there had been this bad king of streets that had not been a Passover like that one. And the priests and the Levites arose and blessed the people. Their voice was heard, and their prayer came up to his holy dwelling place unto heaven. I'm reminded here at this closing verse of verse 30. Verse 27, let's read this again. And the priests and the Levites arose and blessed the people, and their voice was heard. Their prayer coming up to his holy dwelling place up in Jerusalem. Does this not parallel a teaching in Revelation? What does it say about the prayers of the saints?
Like incense.
It's like incense. And what are the saints to become? Kings and priests, correct? Become priests unto Melchizedek. Here we have a type. We have this type. The prayers of the priests, the Levites. Their prayers were heard. Now, this time it wasn't just Hezekiah. Now these priests are sanctified to the point that Yahweh is hearing them now. Yahweh is content with the fullness of their hearts now. However far along they haven't yet come, spiritually, mentally up here. Yahweh is content with the progress that they had made, the baby steps they had made. And he decides to hear them. Their voice was lifted up like that incense. As they were lifting up a physical incense, a real incense, you know, the one that smells so good to us. It was that incense. It's a very similar principle, if you will. These people, slowly but surely, coming out of a period, out of a state of captivity. And you have to remember, they were still a vassal state under the king of Assyria. And they had trouble with the Edomites. And it was all to do with their enslavement to sin, the bondage, and the condition of the heart and mind that creates. They were coming out of that as well. Who else, I'm trying to think, led Israel out of slavery once upon a time? So does Hezekiah not serve as a model of Moses in the matter of speaking? Kind of like, or how about, let's say, who's this fellow I seem to recall reading in the book of Nehemiah? You see a similar parallel? Yes, when he restored the temple worship and rebuilt the temple, the people had to come out in a similar manner. Any question or comment, anyone? Yes.
In verse 27, when he says, and their prayer came up to a set of work and a dwelling place in heaven. I'm just thinking, for us as a body of Messiah, when I read this verse 12, 30 verse 12, we just change this one verse just in here. It says, I mean, as a body, is this what we would be praying as a body? And also the hand of Elohim was on the body of Messiah. We give them one heart to do the command of the King Yeshua.
There you go.
And the rulers at the word of God.
Did everybody hear that? Yeah, one more time, please.
Okay, so as the body of Messiah, we're a lot of people have a lot of different ideas and a lot of different things, and we're always wondering, well, how can we come together as one? And so what I'm saying is, if we pray this, the word, it says, also the hand of Elohim was on the body of Yehuda. I'm saying the body of Messiah.
Okay.
To give them one heart to do the command of the King Yeshua and the rulers at the word of God.
Same principle. You're correct. Anyone else? Yes, David.
Yeah. Just to tag on to that, I was thinking you're talking about types, and we're looking at Hezekiah, Messiah, Moses, but look as a type of the people. Easily the people could have rejected everything that Hezekiah was trying to do. But if we read, they accepted it. They were starving for it, and they wanted more. And so the people there are a type of us. When Yeshua returns, we're going to be looking for it, we're hoping for it, we're starving for it. And when he finally gives it to us, we're going to want more. Instead of 7 days, let's do 14 days. Instead of 8 days for the Feast of Tabernacle, let's do all year, so to speak.
Well, they did another 7 in the time of Solomon.
Yes, and so we look at the type of people that Hezekiah was dealing with, the fact that they accepted and embraced and loved everything that he was doing, bringing them back to the word as opposed to the kings before him that were rejecting Yahweh's word. It's bad when the people want the word more than the king wants the word. And so that's the mentality or the type that we should have, being starved for the word and embracing it when we hear it, when we see it, and when it comes to us.
Well, that's an easy idea to get out of here, isn't it, Dave? That the people wanted more than the king, more than the priest?
Yep.
That's that's too easy to get out of there, David. I agree with you. The king led, but the people, that's what it would seem before this whole thing is out, isn't it? Maybe not with Hezekiah, but how about those that followed him? Or the other kings that came after him? it would seem the people wanted it more than some of the priests did.
Hey, Curtis,
Yes,
I want to bring up a point to add on to what David is saying. We want to make sure that we are the ones starting for it, like we're saying, and not be like the people of Israel, where when Moses was there, they were all accepting. They were accepting what he told them.
yes.
But as soon as he went away, what would happen? They would start veering away. And we don't want to be that kind of people. We want to make sure that we are always starting, no matter whether the ones that the Messiah, whether the Messiah is here with us or not. We want to make sure we're continuing to starve for that information. We're wanting to just continue to strive forward.
And yes, what you did say, that's where we're going with this actually. Because following the time of Moses came Joshua, but after Joshua, he said, after I'm dead and gone, I know y'all are all going to turn away. Y'all are going to go back to chasing the gods and idols of Egypt, ones of all. Oh, no, we wouldn't do such a thing. Far be that from us. Yes, we need to maintain that hunger for righteousness. To want that good, cold spiritual water, the good spiritual food. Because after Hezekiah died, what happened? It went right back where it gotten. Yes, Marvin, you had your hand up.
Yeah, we want to be continually desiring the truth, learning, and growing in the wisdom and truth of the Father.
That's true. Because what happens when people stop learning the truth? For whatever reason, they're drawn away by worldly desires, or they think they know enough, they think they've had enough, or some cases, some people may even think they know it all, or some other guy knows it all. All they got to do is say, well, what he said. Well, Yahweh don't work that way. That's where a falling away can occur. Yes, Daniel.
That just calls to mind scripture that says, those that have, more will be given to them, and those that do not have, will be taken away. Did you hear that?
Say it,
I
repeat
said
that.
that. Calls to mind the scripture that says, those that have, more will be given unto them, and those that do not have, it will be taken away from them. So those that are seeking after truth are going to receive truth and then some.
I want to add on to that. It doesn't matter how much of the truth that you're seeking. If you're not putting it into action, it means nothing. So you can be the smartest person in the world, but if you're not using that for something positive, and you're just holding on to it for yourself, and you're not helping with it or improving anything with it, it's useless. Right.
Because we can't go around thinking we know it all or have all, because speaking for myself, I don't even know what all the questions are yet. Let alone all the answers. Because in order for me to search out a new topic, or maybe not a new topic, but some must say a greater understanding, what do I need first? I need a question. I'm still a man learning. In this flesh, I'm not going to learn what all the questions are. Anyone else? How are we on time, David? How are we on time, David? 15 minutes. In any case, chapter 31, remaining in 2 Chronicles, he goes through all the reports that Hezekiah had done. He gets rid of all the, let's just read that right quick. Now, when it had finished, all the Israel who were present went out from all the cities of Judah and broke up all the sacred pillars, cut down all the wooden images, threw all the high places in the altars from all of Judah, Benjamin, Ephraim, and Manasseh, until they had utterly destroyed them all. And the children of Israel had returned to their own cities, every man to his possession. Okay, it's great. While they were on Jerusalem, being happy, but now it's where the test begins. Now what can we do? What are they going to do when they go back home? Well, for a season, they're going to be well behaved. I was pointed out already. I think we know where this story is going. During the time of Hezekiah, they're going to be well behaved. Question, what about us when we go from here? Yeah, everyone's glad and happy to be at the Feast of Tabernacles. This is my favorite time of year. I look forward to this all year. That's the easy part, be happy, and grateful, and joyful while I'm here. But how about when I go back home out into the world? Hezekiah appointed the divisions of the priests and the Levites. Here he goes again, just like David had done. Hezekiah appointed the divisions of the priests, the Levites according to their division, each man according to his service. The priests and the Levites for burnt offerings, peace offerings, to serve, to give thanks, and to praise in the gates of the camp of Yahweh. Just like, back at the beginning of the story, it says, just like his father David had done. He also appointed a portion of his possession for burnt offerings, morning and evening burnt offerings, the burnt offerings for the Sabbaths, the new moons, the set feasts. This is written in the law of Yahweh. Here we go. We see a king making provision for all the sacrifices. Didn't Yahweh do something similar for Abraham? Make a provision for a sacrifice? I think he did. Moreover, he commanded people who dwelt in Jerusalem to contribute to support the priests and the Levites, that they might devote themselves to the law of Yahweh. Keep the appropriate tithe, make the appropriate sacrifice, and offering of them, keep them busy. And so the commandment circulated, the children of Israel brought in abundance first fruits of grain and wine and oil and honey, and all the produce of the field. They brought in abundantly the tithe of everything. So far, so good. We got this, at least on earth, this kingdom of Yahweh is springing out. At first, it's starting off in Jerusalem, and it's gradually spreading out into Judah, and all the children of Israel and Judah, and the rest of Israel too, who dwelt in the cities of Judah, brought the tithe of oxen and sheep, and the tithe of the holy things, which were consecrated to Yahweh, their Elohim, that they laid in heaps. The third month, they began laying them in heaps, and they finished them in the 7th month. What's in the 7th month? Feast of Tabernacles. Hezekiah and the leaders came and saw the heaps. They blessed Yahweh and his people Israel. And Hezekiah questioned the priests and the Levites concerning the heaps. And Azariah, the chief of the priests in the house of Zadok, answered and said, since the people have begun to bring offerings unto the house of Israel, we have had enough to even have plenty of left, for Yahweh has blessed his people. And now what you see here is this great abundance. Now Hezekiah commanded them to prepare rooms in the house of Yahweh, and they prepared them. They had more than they knew how to store. That was a problem. That's a nice problem to have, wasn't it? Well, just go more places to put it up. And they faithfully brought in the offerings, the tithes, and dedicated things. Caniah, the Levite, had charge of them. And Shimei, his brother, was next. So we're listening to Jehiel, Azariah, Nahaz, Michelle, Jehemoth, Josabad, boy, these names are hard to say. Eliel, Ishmachiah, Nahath, Benaniah were the observers under the hand of Caniah, and Shimei, his brother, had the command of Hezekiah the king. And then Azariah, the ruler of the house of Elohim. Corey brought the sons of Imai, Levi, keeper of the gate. And the eastern gate was over the free will offerings of Yahweh, to distribute the holy offerings of Yahweh and the most holy things. And under him were Eden, Mimyamin, Yeshua, Shimei, Amariah, Shechaniah, his faithful descendants to the cities of the priests, to distribute the allotments of the brethren by the divisions, and the great to the greatest one. Aside from those males who were 3-year-olds and up, who were written in the genealogy, they distributed to everyone who entered the house of Yahweh his daily portion for the work and service by his division. 3 years old and up. We got someone who would qualify for that here. And to the priests who were written in the genealogy according to the father's house, to the Levites from 20 years old and up, according to their work, by their divisions. A Levite reaches 20 years old. What happens to him? He begins his service, correct? Same thing if he's in the priestly line. He doesn't really begin his service, but they go to school, so to speak, and they actually begin their service. When they turn 30, they spend 10 years learning their job. We don't have training like that today, do we? But it goes on to list the rest of the performance that Hezekiah had run, all concerning the worship of Yahweh. Thank you, Jacob. And then enter stage left, Sennacherib. And we won't go on any further there because we discussed that already. I'll refer you to that. Is there any other question or comment? Do what? I guess not. Any other question or comment? If not, well, we'll break for lunch. We'll feast on the physical food. Good, yummy physical food I know is waiting for us. And we'll be back at 3 o'clock.
Photo op.
Oh, yeah. For David Gibson session at 3. And as soon as we're done here, we will have the photo op here. The group photo right outside. Praise Yahweh.
Hallelujah.